Welcome to Our Hometown, the show where we take an in-depth look at some of the people and organizations that make this area unique. We'll start this month's show with a brief discussion with the directors of Brunswick Little Theater's newest play, I Love You, You're Perfect, Now Change. Then we'll give you a sneak peek into the play with a performance by Rasa Love. Finally, we'll close the show this month with a great interview with Joe and Mo Stanley. Joe and Mo are products of Brunswick County and the Brunswick County school system. They, along with two other siblings, all obtained their college degrees, and they're currently the owner of Joe and Mo's Automotive. Each of them has also had previous careers, Joe in banking and Mo in education. We're looking forward to hearing their stories about growing up in Brunswick County, so stay with us for the next half hour as we explore our hometown. My guests are Sue MacCallum and Larry Bocciaro. They're with the Brunswick Little Theater, and they're here today to tell us about a great upcoming production called I Love You, You're Perfect, Now Change. Sue and Larry, welcome to our show.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Okay. Sue, we'll begin with you. Tell us just a little bit about the show.
Well, the show is presented with special arrangement with R&H Theatricals in New York, and it is produced under the auspices of Brunswick Little Theater. And we are just very excited about the show. I Love You, You're Perfect is probably my favorite off-Broadway musical because it's a throwback to the days of almost a vaudeville, but the comedy review. The thing that's special about it, though, it has the element of a story of romantic couples, and so it's not only song and a little bit of dance movement, but sketches and skits that are hilarious. And I think that I'd like to ask Larry Bocciaro, who is our assistant director, to tell us a little bit more of the specifics of the show.
So it's fast-paced, it's a musical, it's a comedy, and Larry, you're on.
Well, it takes us through life, from early dating through senior dating. And it's comical, and it's tear-jerking, and it's something that everyone can relate to, because at some time or another in everyone's life, or most people's lives, they have experienced the things that they're going to see in this production.
So as I understand it, it's a series of vignettes with a relatively small cast playing a number of different roles. Am I correct?
Yes, that's correct. And what we looked for is people that can move well, have excellent voices, and can play multiple characters, because we have 6 characters playing multiple roles with multiple partners. And we've created a very nice blend. And we have people with comic instincts who are very fine actresses and musical comedy adults.
And we're going to hear some music from your production a little later in the show. You're both directing the show. Larry, tell us a little bit about your experience in directing.
Okay. Well, I've directed some plays before, and the biggest thing in directing is understanding what your characters can do. Now, we're not big-time New York production here. This is volunteers. These are people who do other things for a living,
sure,
who like to be in a program such as this. So it is our job to recognize what the strong points and the weak points are in each character that we cast for this a particular show such as this.
Sure.
So, and once we recognize those traits, we have to match them up with certain characters that will fit and give them the best possible chance at a successful show. So that's just the basic challenge of a director on this kind of a setting.
Sue, we want our audience to know the time and place of the production. Tell us more about that.
Yes, the production takes place on February 21st, 22nd, and 23rd, which is right after Valentine's Day. Perfect time for a show about romance. And the following weekend on March 1st and 2nd, and it's going to take place at the Brunswick Center at Southport, which is in Smithville Crossing. And this is actually the first theatrical performance full length that's going to be done. And since it's a comedy review, it fits very nicely into the facility we're going to be performing in.
How will adults really appreciate the show? We've spoken a little bit about it, but tell us some more.
Well, and I'll start, and Larry has several things I'm sure he'd like to add. But because it's a roller coaster ride and a joyful ride through life with fights, makeups, breakups, and getting back together again, it tells about love's resiliency. And everybody of all ages, really, it's an adult comedy, but everybody really can identify with that, the yin and the yang of coupledom.
I'm sure. Larry, any other thoughts?
Yeah, every scene in this show is a separate entity. So your attention is on this one scene, which might be 5 minutes long, it might be 8 minutes long, it might be 3 minutes long. But when you put all of these little segments together, it's a journey through life. And everyone can relate to either one part or another, and through their own experiences in their own lifetime. And so it really doesn't matter how old you are. Sue's right, it is an adult comedy. So it really doesn't matter if you're a young adult or an old adult, you're going to find something in there that's, that you can relate to.
Larry, I know you have some lively music in your show. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, we have a music director who is fantastic with music and just great with people, trying to portray what they're supposed to be doing. And her name is Barbara Berry, and she's excellent at music direction. She's done it before. She's done it most of her career. And she's doing it for us. We're delighted to have her do it for us.
I know our viewing audience will have a delightful time. We'll repeat the dates on screen. And we thank you, Sue MacCallum and Larry Bocciaro, for being with us.
Thanks so much, Jim.
It was a pleasure.
Well, I've walked down the aisle as much as Liz Taylor, but I've always stood off to the side. Each bride has me dressed in a gown I detest, always a bridesmaid, never a bride. For Catlin, I wore satin, which I looked really fat in, but again, you should have seen her man Ken. All those calories he logged up till his arteries clogged up. He died on the couch watching ESPN. Too many weddings and too many dresses that all make my hips look so wide. Not a gown I'd reuse, ditto the matching shoes. Always a bridesmaid, never a bride.
Joe and Mo, welcome to our show.
Thank you.
Thank you very
It's a
much.
pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure.
One of the pleasures I have in this show is to interview interesting people, and I've known both of you for a number of years, and you've had a great life's experience, and you have great stories. And Joe, I'll start with you. Talk to us a little bit about growing up here in Brunswick County, because so few of us are natives.
Jim, I don't mind telling you, I'm 62, so I've been in Brunswick County all my life, with the exception of going away to school and coming back. And I came back when my daddy gave us the challenge to come back and help our community, and that's what we've always tried to do. But the Brunswick County of today is so different. I remember when we didn't even have a store that stayed open after 5 o'clock.
Talk to us a little bit about your memories.
Well, we grew up on a farm. We were in a community where my dad had 5 brothers and 5 sisters, and we worked on each other's farms. We swapped labor, and that helped us make it economically, and as a result of that, everybody survived. So it was a good family experience, a good relationship, and that's probably why Mo and I are in business together today, because we saw how close our dads worked together and how successful they were with it. And so, but growing up in Brunswick County was not a bad experience. People talk about small towns. I think your home, your school, and your church actually shapes your life. And that's what our parents had, was a triangle that said you will go to church, you will go to school, and you will work. And we grew up working on the farm.
Are your parents still alive?
Neither of our parents, yes and no. Neither of them are living, but they're still alive in us because the things they told us never left us.
Great.
And so that's where we are today, still living their dream.
What would they say about the Brunswick County of today?
I think they would be very proud. While Brunswick County has changed a lot, it's remained the same in a lot of ways. It's still a rural community for the most part. I think it's sometimes we have two Brunswick counties, that west of 17 or south of 17, that north, where you got your golf course communities versus your rural farm communities. And I think sometimes people lose sight of that because everybody in Brunswick County is still not doing very well today. Some are doing better than others.
True.
And we've
Very
had
true.
such a great influx of people, sometimes those things are overlooked.
Mo, we talked beforehand, and I did want to ask you this. I'll ask you both. Tell us an individual that you remember that most impacted your life.
Jim, that's very, very easy for me to do. It's my high school basketball coach. His name was Robert Height. He came in my sophomore year. I could not play very well. I was shy, I was afraid. He totally revolutionized my world. He was the reason that I was able to get an athletic scholarship to college in basketball. And I remember so many good things about him. Not only was he a good basketball coach, he was a good man. He taught us how to win, how to compete. He taught us how to do well in the classroom because he set a standard. He would check our report cards. We had to report in to him at the end of the marking period. He would not allow us not to do homework, not to study properly and everything. And then even after high school and college, I remember going to college, and when I got to college, I felt like I just had to pass in college because I couldn't let Coach Height down.
That's great.
Okay, and we maintain a very, very strong relationship even today. And each time I see him, I'm so thankful that he came into my life.
Is he still here in the county?
He lives in Charlotte today.
Well, hopefully you'll be able to send him a copy of this CD and know of your tribute to him.
I would love to do that.
We'll do that for sure.
Yeah, but I rank him right up there with my father.
Great.
I mean, so that's an easy question for
Okay.
me.
Joe, same question, same question.
You know, there are so many, but if I had to isolate on a person that I saw with courage, I would have to say it was a high school teacher named Hazel Williams. My next door neighbor was one of the first students to go to Charlotte High School to integrate the high school system in 1965. When he came up for graduation in 67, his grades said clearly he was the valedictorian. But in an era of 1965, that didn't look good for a black kid to be the valedictorian of an all-white high school. So there were teachers and others who tried to derail that process, and she said it was not right. She took a stand and said, I will expose the school if it means my job. This kid is deserving, and he should get it. This kid went on to become a lawyer and do very well in life. He was very smart, but just the Jim Crow movement, the segregation movement of the era, I was impressed with the courage she had, and that's taken me back to taking some stands on things that I probably would not have taken a stand on. I mean, that was a person that I will never forget for that. She
Tell
has
us
passed
her
on.
name again.
Hazel Williams was her name.
And I just interrupted you. You were about to say that she just passed on.
Yeah, she has passed on. But the memory of what she did lives on with me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Joe, I'll stay with you on this question. Tell us about growing up in an era when the schools were both segregated and then later for you, integrated.
Jim, both were very good experiences and much needed experiences for me to be who I am today. 1 through 9, I went to Union High School, which was a predominantly black school in this county. Charlotte High School was the predominantly white school in this area. Waccamaw was up in the Ash, Little Prong area. One day, and I don't know why, my daddy came to me and said, Joe, how would you like to go to Charlotte High School next year as a part of the integration movement? And I didn't have any reservations because I didn't really know what to expect.
Sure.
It was an eye-opening experience, to say the least. I think I had to establish everything at Charlotte that I already had at Union. New friendships, new teacher relationships. But most of all, I didn't live very far from the school, but no one would give us a seat on the bus. You know, there may be several seats with just 2 people on them, but nobody would allow you to sit down beside them, and that was just the era and the time. I conquered that problem because I eventually got my bus license and drove the bus. So you can't stop me there, and then you had to find your seat. But just the racial slurs and all that were not very good. But it taught me how to get along with all people and to know that I could compete. I graduated in the top of my class. I played basketball and was very successful at it. My only problem was I wound up playing center because I was the highest jumping kid, but I wasn't the tallest kid, and I never understood that, but now I do better.
Now, are you talking college basketball?
Well, I had the opportunity to play high school basketball and also college basketball. And, you know, back then, we didn't have a lot of kids from this area that made college basketball teams. And
Right.
my family and my brothers and I were successful in doing that because we just played a lot of basketball all the time.
And it's worth saying that both you guys and your other siblings, you have sisters, am I right?
I've got one sister who played high school basketball but did not play college basketball. But I have another brother, a younger brother, who played college basketball as well, and his son played college
The
basketball.
observation I was making is that they all attended college.
Yeah.
And they've all assumed very successful careers in their lives.
Right.
Yeah. Tell us briefly about them, about your siblings.
I'm not the oldest boy. Our sister is the oldest of all. We have a very close-knit family. We have another younger brother. He lives in Dallas, Texas. He's a regional salesperson for an insurance company. We are very close. We get along. We promote family values. We believe that it's important to have good family unity, peace, and harmony. And that's something that was passed on to us from our parents also.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
I think lots of times it took us a while to realize because we just assume that that's the decor for all families, and it's not necessarily true. We even get people today that will come in and ask us, how do you guys work together?
Yeah.
You know, but
The answer is very successful.
But I think that as I reflect back, I am so proud of my parents who taught us how to be a good family. And so we're going to maintain that, and we have a responsibility to pass that on. So our family is just real special.
I'm going to come back and ask you a little bit more about your parents in a minute, but I'm jumping around on you. It's important to know that so many people in the community know Joe and Mo as Joe and Mo's Automotive. It's also interesting, I think, for our viewers to know that each of you has had careers preceding your current career. Joe, you were in banking, and Mo, you were a professional in education. You were an educator. Am I correct?
That's correct.
All right. Joe, tell us about your previous career, and then I'll go back to Mo.
I was in school, and one day one of my uncles asked me what my major was, and I told him business administration. At that time, Ron Sasser was the city exec of United Carolina Bank, or Waccamaw Bank, back in that era before it became United Carolina Bank. And he inspired me to go in for an interview when I got out of college. And I went in, and then I went to Whiteville for an interview, and I'll never forget the question. Someone asked me, why do you want to be a banker? I said, I've never been. If you don't give me the opportunity, I won't know what it's like. And I got the job.
Good.
So I worked in banking for about 14 years. Had a very good time in banking, learned a lot about the business world and others. But at the time I went in, there were a few minorities in banking in the county, in the state, or in where I'd gone. And it was different again. But my experience at Charlotte High School helped me bridge that gap a lot.
Sure.
Because being the only person in the room when I was only one of 5 in a class of about 80 or 90 in high school, I was unfazed by it. So that's how that helped me, and that's how that experience, even as difficult as it was at times, helped me for the next post I had in life.
Great answer. Mo, you were an educator. Tell us about that.
Yeah, worked in the system 15 years. When I graduated from college, really didn't plan to go into education. I had a possibility of going overseas and playing semi-pro team. And so I just happened to be down to the school during that break, and Mr. Kazai, who was the principal at that time, said to me, "I understand you graduated. Would you like a job?" So I came in, did an interview, and that's how I got into education. I taught health and physical education for 2 years, and then Mr. Kazai came back to me and said, "I would like for you to be my assistant principal," because as we go back to history in Brunswick County at that time, if you had a white principal, the assistant was a minority, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
So Joseph Butler at that time got a position at South, and so he kept on me about it, and I would keep refusing because at that time I was riding my bike to school and shooting and teaching 5 periods a day, basketball, horseshoe.
Now, at what school?
Charlotte Miller School at that time.
Yeah.
Okay. Then after 2 years, I finally accepted. He said to me, "Would you take assistant principalship until I find somebody?" And I said, "Okay, I'll try it." And
the
so
rest is history. Huh?
Well, he came in the first day and said, "I got to talk back with you." He said, "I got to be honest with you. I don't want you to quit. I haven't talked to anybody else. I just have paid attention to you for 2 years, and I believe you'd be good in administration." And that's how I got in administration.
That's a great answer.
Okay. And then for 2 years, 3 years as assistant principal, the same thing happened again. At West, during that time, early 70s or so, they were having some issues at West. They'd had a couple of riots. A couple of teachers had been assaulted, and at that time, Ed Lemon was the principal there. So the Board of Education approached me again, wanted to know if I would go to the high school. And that's how I got to the high school. And right away, I remember meeting with Ed Lemon. We, right off the bat, was Bud and Jeff, if you want to say, our ideas, our goals, our objectives, and we really gelled really well.
We'll take a break, and we'll be right back.
Is 6:30 too early for a Get Fit workout? Are your weeknights too hectic to catch the West Brunswick football? Do you find yourself missing all your favorite ATMC TV shows? Well, now you don't have to. ATMC TV is airing all their latest shows on demand. Stop, pause, fast forward, or rewind. Watch your shows on your time. Tune to Channel 1 to see shows like Brunswick Biz, Get Fit, The Coastal Kitchen, and more. Stay connected to beautiful Brunswick County with ATMC TV on demand. Brought to you free by ATMC.
We're back after a brief break. I'm interviewing Joe and Mo Stanley. And Joe, I want to go to you because I think it's really worthwhile to talk about parents. And in this case, your parents. Tell us more about them.
Well, Jim, both my parents were from Brunswick County. One was in Charlotte and the other was in Supply, and they met and got married. And we said we had 4 kids. But neither of my parents, or only one of my parents, was able to go to the high school from Supply because back in the days of segregation and Jim Crow, the county didn't provide transportation to schools in Southport. My dad had 5 brothers and 5 sisters, and only his youngest sister was able to get a high school degree. Those 11 people had about 40-some children, and almost 20 or 30 of their kids are college graduates or higher education. The reason for that was the triangle we grew up under: work, God, and education. And
Excellent.
I have a responsibility. One of my favorite scriptures is, "To whom much is given, much is required." And that's why I give back to the community, because I realize what a difference it can make when somebody inspires you to do that.
Tell us one little thing that you might remember about your parents, their personality or their style or something unusual.
No nonsense.
Okay. All right. Obviously, you remember that, don't you?
Yeah, I do. Matter of fact, I tease people and tell them there weren't any trees around our house until we got grown because they were broken down in switches. And they believed in discipline. They loved you, but you were going to follow. You were going to, no nonsense. You were going to do the right thing. No questions.
Mo, you and Joe had great parents. Talk to us more about parenting and the need for great parents.
Jim, it is so important and it's crucial that parents understand the role that they must play in the development of their children. Our dad was a visionary. He believed that he didn't necessarily tell us that he wanted us to do a 4-year college degree, but he always talked about he wanted us to have a better opportunity, okay? And so I can remember him even having a plan, because at times there were 3 of us in college at the same time. Even though we had scholarships, 3 of us, it was still financially tough.
Sure.
But that was his goal, that was his objective, and we worked together as a family. When my sister graduated, things got better. When I graduated, things got a little better. Then Joe graduated. And then when my younger brother graduated, we had changed our life considerably. I have, as we look at our educational system today, and if I look back from the time I was at Union, where we only had 1 microscope in the entire school, we had people graduating. A young man, Emerson Ford, graduated from Union High School, and he became a president at Xerox. And we had lawyers, and we had people who went on to do well in life. It was because of that close-knit educational process. My major concerns today, I think we've lost our focus in education. If I look at it as a pie, parents is in that pie, administrators, boards of education, we all fit in that pie.
Sure.
And so we can't eliminate any one aspect. The one thing that I see today that nobody really talks about, they talk about kids, they talk about principals, they talk about teachers. Nobody talk about parents and their responsibilities and how they're never really held accountable. I mean, whether they prepare their kids for, by teaching them ABCs or whatever, it's just, we're upside down. Sometimes I almost feel like rather than an educational center, we become an appeasement center, and that has got to change.
That's an awesome answer to a tough and broad question. I thank you for that. Each of you, throughout your careers, has been very active in the community, volunteering. We're a county that's blessed with so many volunteers, but among them are the 2 of you. Talk to us about volunteering, especially with the youth, and the importance of the lessons they learn in those early ages.
Jim, to assume that everybody's family was like our family is a false assumption. I feel like that, as I said earlier, the people that influence your life don't have to be your parents. That's why we should put kids out there to let them meet other people and get used to other people. About 5 or 6 years ago, a youth basketball program was started in this county that had about 200 participants. Mo and I decided to become coaches in that system. Over that period of time, each year we coach about 10 kids. About 6 or 7 years, we've touched the lives of 70 or 80 kids. The most meaningful part of that is to run in a kid in a grocery store, and you may not remember him, but he comes running and saying, "Hey, coach," you know.
You're right.
They remember us, and that's the reward for it. But the other thing is, you never know when you touch a LeBron James or Michael Jordan or Larry Bird.
Absolutely.
And how they're going to touch other people's lives.
You just never know. Just never know.
Yeah.
That's a great way to wrap up our interview. It's been such a pleasure being with the 2 of you, Joe and Mo Stanley. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much
you.
for having
I'm
us.
honored.
We really enjoyed it. Thank you for joining us this month for Our Hometown. If you have a story that you'd like to share on a future show, visit us at atmctv.com to tell us about it. Thanks again for joining us, and tune in again next month as we explore more of Our Hometown.
We are ATMC TV, Channel 3 and HD Channel 910, your community channel.